I found something. It was a big stuffed animal that has different heartbeats and sensations, and it does have a proven calming effect for kids, but it wasn't accessible. I couldn't fit it in my purse. If I forgot it and I was out, it would cause other problems because my children then associated like, okay, feeling calm in moments of panic with this. My phone was vibrating and I was like, why haven't I thought of my phone? Obviously, I wonder how we can adapt that sensation. So I looked into it further. I talked to some developers, just what can we do with our phone? What types of sensations can we create?
In my head, there's the movie Inside Out that's playing because that's the movie I go back to when I think about emotions. Hello and welcome back to the Dollar Diaries podcast. Today we're joined by the amazing founder and CEO of Hoopla. Hi, Jacqueline. Welcome onto the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I just wanted to dive straight into what is Hoopla and what does it do?
So Hoopla, it's an emotional wellness company. We provide tools for families to connect and bring joy and calm into their lives.
That's a beautiful way of putting it out there. And I tried testing the app before I could come onto this podcast. So could you walk me through what are the key features of Hoopla?
Well, first of all, we aren't just an app anymore. I mean, we started out as an app and it is a multisensory app. We use haptic feedback from the phone, so the vibration of the phone, to create an experience for children that really allows them to connect with their emotions, with their parents, without adding a lot of screen time. So while we did start as an app, now we are realizing a lot of parents, they want physical tools and they might be screen-free parenting altogether. So we're providing that as well. We're developing some other tools, and we really want to be an emotional wellness company for families.
So what kind of tools are these that you're developing?
So we're developing activities for children to connect with their parents and learn about emotional regulation, learning about all of their emotions. We're creating a methodology. It's feel it, move it, and connect. So how do you feel your emotions in your body? How do you move through them in a safe manner or move with them? And then how do you connect with the emotions as well as with your parents? So there are activities that guide parents and children through this understanding of emotions, but there are also calming tools. So while we don't want to create things that are just reactive, we want to be proactive. We understand that sometimes you need in the moment tools when your child has a tantrum or is anxious. And so we provide calming tools using that multisensory feature of the phone.
And I have a follow-up question, but before that, what is the age group? When can kids actually start using it?
So most of the content is for 3 to 8 years old. This is the crucial developmental years. So we're starting there right now, but it is just as much for the parents as well. So in the future, we will be adding different age groups.
You know, when you were speaking about the whole feel it, move it emotions, like I really just had this whole emotional moment myself because I don't think emotions are really taught. Or at least when I was growing up, coming from an Indian household, and I can actually vouch for this with a lot of my friends that we never really spoke about emotions. And I don't think we understand emotions as well as we should as 25-year-olds. Like we have zero idea about emotions. So personally, just me, last week, my parents moved out, like they've retired and they went back home. And the first week I was fine. I'm like, it's normal. And then like this random Saturday, I came home and I had this like full emotional sadness. Like, I'm like, and it, when people say the emotion hit like a brick, I never thought I could feel it. Like, I never thought there would be any emotion that would actually hit me like a brick, but this one did. Like, I just came home and it was empty and I'm like, wow. Like, there was just that sadness and I didn't know what to do with that emotion as such. And I just like, I sat down. And like, I'm like, should I cry? Like, what do I do with this emotion? Like, what do I do with the sadness? Or like, they're not gone. They've just moved away, but I feel it. I feel the emptiness. I feel the loneliness. And I'm like, okay, like, it's okay, relax.
Yeah.
So when it comes to emotions, how do you deal with it? And what's one way of teaching it?
Yeah, it's so important. And at every age, there are adults with road rage, and that's basically similar to a tantrum in a child. So we all just react differently. And I think so many adults haven't really fully comprehended how to manage their emotions and how to regulate their emotions. So at least when I was growing up, I was really taught how to cope, how to move through things rather than really trying to understand what I was feeling and why I was feeling it and what I can do with those feelings. So I think that it's what we're trying to do with Hoopla is create tools to teach about all emotions, the good and the bad, because there are so many tools that are reactive. So it's almost just focusing on the negative emotions, but let's learn just as much about the positive emotions as well. That's why we really want to focus on emotional wellness, even beyond just mental health. It's really discussing emotions, how to feel it, move it, and then connect.
So when it comes to a 3-year-old, from my understanding, and I have very limited understanding when it comes to emotions, as you can tell, what are the few basic emotions that you start with for a 3-year-old? And then I'm assuming you move it up. Is it a system where it unlocks? And I'm sorry I'm putting it this way because in my head, there's the movie Inside Out that's playing, because that's the movie I go back to when I think about emotions. So how does it work? Because in Inside Out Part 1, there were like certain emotions. And then Inside Out Part 2, there were other emotions that were unlocked.
Right.
So is that how it actually works?
Well, there's no one size fits all. So what we're trying to create is a tool that helps parents guide children. And yes, we do teach and try to simplify emotions in a way that children understand. So we use characters. We have characters like sensitive sloth, sleepy sheep, curious cat, mindful manatee. And through these characters, we can tell stories. We use songs quite a lot. We use movement activities. We use storytelling, and we try to engage children and understand emotions through these characters, and also allow them to understand that, yes, there are some big emotions that everyone kind of knows about, but then, you have these wheel of emotions. So maybe you're not really angry, like what's deeper beyond that? And that is difficult to teach a child, but it's true. Like when you can create this habit and have a conversation that is consistent on a daily basis, you will see a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old being able to say, like, I'm frustrated. That's a specific emotion that they're kind of tapping into. And with the right guidance, that's the whole goal of Hoopla and what we're trying to bring into families' lives.
So I now understand what it does for a child.
Mm-hmm.
What's the role that a parent would play in this? Like, how do they come into the picture? Are they only using it to learn or maybe teach the emotions, or do they add an additional aspect to this?
Basically, it's a point of connection. So we do use, specifically for the app, we're using the phone as a point of connection rather than a barrier, which it typically is. So what we're doing is we want to create a daily habit. It's kind of like a check-in. We are providing micro lessons in emotional wellness for families. So again, through fun activities, it could be grounding activities that might be used in a clinical setting, but we're creating just a fun way that parents and children can use it just in daily life, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So let's say an ideal scenario. We have a parent who comes back from their 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
They sit down with the child and both of them technically have the app open. And then what are the next steps? Do they then ask the child questions, or how does it work?
So right now, we are developing many other tools. So things are evolving, but the existing app that we have now, there are really 2 ways to use it. You can open it up in the moment, stressful situation. Say a child is anxious, maybe they're dealing with separation anxiety, going to school. So in that moment, their body is responding in a certain way. Maybe their heart is beating fast and maybe they're tensing their muscles. So you would go to one of the characters, one of the 5 characters, and in a situation like this, you'd probably go to sensitive sloth. And this character guides your breathing, and you can actually feel the heartbeat. So sensitive sloth, through storytelling and through the haptic feedback, you feel a very rapid heartbeat. And then throughout the story, it talks about how if you breathe slowly, your heartbeat will slow down. And there is, it is regulating your nervous system. So if you feel this slow heartbeat, you are matching the breath and of this sensitive sloth, and your heartbeat will slow down. So that is one way to use the app. Another way to use it is this daily check-in. So 5 minutes a day is what we ask of parents, to just sit down with their child. And then it's categorized in different ways. So there are games, there are songs, there are movement activities. They can select one and just do the activity together. So maybe it's the color game. And the color game is you take the app and a different color comes on the screen, and as the person holding the phone, you would find something in the room that you're in of that color, and then the other person tries to guess. This is bringing in grounding activities. So later on, if a child is stressed out and their thoughts are going in a million directions, you can ground them by physically showing them what is around in this room. What can you see? What can you smell? What can you feel? And this is a grounding exercise that would occur in a more clinical setting or cognitive behavioral therapy.
That's a really beautiful way of putting it. And the way you've explained it, I might start using it, even though I don't think it's made for me, but I might just
I use it before important meetings. I hold sensitive sloth. And what's wonderful is it's so discreet. So, as someone who has had anxiety throughout my life, and I've had panic attacks, and there are still situations where I'm very nervous going into, for example, pitch competitions. I despise pitch competitions. My heart's beating so rapidly, and I just hold sensitive sloth, right before I go on stage, and it definitely helps me calm down.
That's really beautiful to know. And the grounding activity that you were talking about, I've read about it so many times, but so often I just forget it. Because in that moment, I'm just like, I'm so stressed. I don't know what to do. I'm like, okay, just calm down.
Right.
Like, that's it. But the counter side of it is that, and I'm sure you've been asked this question a billion times, does this create dependency on technology when we're trying to, create a world where we are not as dependent on tech as we are now?
Right. It is definitely a question
that's been asked
a lot. Yes. I just think that I understand both sides of the conversation. And I think there is definitely a growing movement for families to be screen free. I don't know if you've heard of the book Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, but it's talking about the real dangers in life are now online, especially when it comes to children. I think it's important when there is a movement like this to try to challenge it and see it from the other side and look at all of the benefits that are provided by technology. It doesn't have to be this scary thing if we use it in the right way, if we know how to use it. We definitely make sure that the features that we're including in the app are non-addictive features. So it's very easy to increase retention by having badges and streaks and showing all of the progress. But that also forms more like negative habits. So for the child, if they have something that keeps them on the phone for extended periods of time, that's when there's a problem. So we don't want to do that. We want to create limits around it and boundaries. And so because there is such a link between tech use and mental health, we're very conscious of how we're creating and implementing these features into the app. And while maybe it's going to just make our growth just take longer to really bring in the users and increase that retention, but we would rather go at a slower pace and make sure that everything we include in the app is very intentional and non-habit forming, at least the bad habits. We just want to make it a daily habit, but with boundaries.
Just coming back to Hoopla, is there a large team behind Hoopla? How many people do you have? Is there a scientist or researchers that, how many hours do you put into Hoopla every single day?
Well, I mean, Hoopla is my full-time job. So about 2 years ago, I went all in on Hoopla. I do have a small team. We have a core team of about 4 people. And then we have an extended team of creatives. We work with a child psychologist, and she is an advisor for Hoopla. And she is doing a lot of the research behind it and just making sure that all of the content we're putting on is appropriate. And then we work with, yeah, the creatives like storytellers, singers, songwriters. We take maybe clinical methods, but we adapt it for this age group, and we make it fun, and we make it something that is more of a preventative tool rather than something that is trying to fix a problem after it's too late. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And you've started this 2-3 years ago, 2022 is, I believe, when you started. Um, did your personal journey of dealing with anxiety as a child play a huge factor into this? What were your thoughts when you started Hoopla? Like, what was the main intention of starting Hoopla?
Yeah, I mean, definitely my past experience has played just a huge role in this. But when I started Hoopla, I didn't have the intention, or when I first came up with the idea, I didn't really have the intention of starting a company. It was more, I had a personal problem. I was trying to deal with my children's. I had 2 young children at the time, a newborn and a 2.5-year-old, and I was just trying to teach emotions to my toddler. And I, as a parent, even though I had a lot of coping mechanisms for myself, and I was still kind of in survival mode, and it worked for me, but it wasn't something that I could necessarily use to teach my children at their level. And so I felt lost. I looked to see what was available in the market, and I reached out to parenting groups and, educators and health professionals. And there was nothing that really fit my needs, but there were a lot of responses from other parents saying, I don't know, but if you find something, tell me, because I'm looking for the same thing. And that's when I realized, okay, it's not just my problem. A lot of families are experiencing this. This was also right after COVID as well. So children were dealing with just a lot of things that we hadn't dealt with as parents in the past. And then I started researching and saw the statistics of mental health and how mental health is affecting our children at such a rapid rate, specifically anxiety. And the fact that we don't have tools that are truly accessible, I thought was shocking. And we need to do more. And that's when I realized, like, okay, this isn't just a personal need or within my community. This is a global need. And this is what I want to focus completely on.
That's interesting, because when you speak about lockdown, I think all of us went through that state where we're like, okay, now what do we do? We had so much of free time, and we were dealing with a lot of emotions, from, let's say, a child to a teenager. Like, when I was in university when we had the lockdown, so I was still occupied with my online classes, but I could see my elder sister who was like, I'm looking out for a job. So she's like anxious. She's like, I'm learning, but I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going to happen next. So we were all in that emotional, anxious state. So something that dealt with all of those emotions is quite interesting. Out of personal reasons, are you going to expand your user base and, introduce this for teenagers, for, I don't know, people who don't have kids but would like to jump on as users? I think something interesting that you mentioned is that there are not a lot of tools out there that deal with emotions. And 4 to 8 is where, you start school. Do you think there is a lack within our educational system where they should be teaching these things to children, especially, as a 4-year-old, you should know what emotions are, what are you dealing with, how to react, how to cope with this, but you're not being taught all of that?
Definitely. I mean, I think that there is much more of an awareness and acceptance of talking about emotions, mental wellness. I think that schools, they are trying to create, or at least bring in systems like, how do children talk about emotions? I know there is the color of emotions, or something that a lot of schools use. But I think we need to go beyond that. I think it definitely should be something that's part of the curriculum. And because emotional wellness should be taught in a similar way that we teach science and math, these are life skills that need to be developed. They're not just something that some people have and some people don't. I mean, resilience is something that is a taught skill. And I think we should start at a young age.
Because when I went to school, uh, the only thing that I started was with alphabets, numbers, addition, multiplication, and then it just went on. I don't think I ever learned anything about emotions or any extracurricular activity for that sort. And then when I was in mid school, I saw the younger kids, and they had, like, even with alphabets, they were now taught how to pronounce every single alphabet, which I was not taught. I was just given a book, and then I was taught that either through, like, this is A, B, C, D. That's how I remember it.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't have anybody who's younger to me in my household, so I don't really know what happens in schools now or how developed it is now, if they're teaching things that have to do with emotions. But I assume there is. What would an ideal school day look like where they teach you about emotions? What are the things that you think they should integrate into an everyday life for a child who's, let's say, 4 years old?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be, like I said, part of the curriculum where there are actual coursework done on emotions and understanding emotions. And I mean, maybe it's kind of integrated into PE, and, because it's something like, I do think with the body and the mind. So how can we create this understanding of how to deal with it on a daily basis? I think that there should be more structure around it, and not necessarily one way to go about it. But I think that teachers need the training and the tools as well. And that's what I found talking to a lot of educators. Like, some classes are more equipped because you might have a teacher who understands mindfulness. They're more involved personally and they want to incorporate it into their classroom. But if you have a teacher who doesn't have that background or interest, then those students are at more of a deficit. So we need more training for teachers on how to integrate it into the classroom as a learned skill, but also how do you deal with certain situations? What kinds of calming tools do you have in your classroom? Do you have calming areas for children and with physical tools that they know how to use? I mean, I would see Hoopla in every classroom, and the combination of these physical tools as well as digital tools.
That's interesting. That's really beautiful the way you've put it out there. Just talking about emotions. Let's say you have a child that's going through an absolute throwing a temper tantrum. How do you calm them down?
Well, there's really no one size fits all. I mean, that's for sure. I think that the reason why I think Hoopla works so well is because if parents are consistent with it, they're just guiding their children. I mean, they're using Hoopla as a tool, but they are the ones who are guiding their children. They're the ones who are looking for cues, these physiological cues that children are expressing during these moments. And they, maybe one thing will work one time, but that might not work the next time. I think it tries to tune into your child as a parent. So if you're doing these activities, if you're talking about these emotions, you are more likely to be able to resolve these situations because you've kind of practiced it before. So that's the intention of Hoopla. It's not to give parents a script and to say, do this, say this, because that exists. And that's really not that helpful. So many parents come to us and they say, I've read all the books, I've memorized all the scripts, but in those moments, they don't work. You can't intellectualize emotions. You can't explain emotions when a child is throwing a tantrum in the grocery store. But there are tools that you can use as a parent. And sometimes it might be trying different things. And maybe, you can use a grounding exercise. Maybe you need more of a distraction. But what we're trying to do is have these exercises on a daily basis. So as a parent, you feel equipped. You have the toolbox. You've already been practicing them, and you can use those things, in the moment when you need it most.
That's beautiful. I mean, this was, I think, the best way that we could have learned about Hoopla and for all those who listen in, this is like a beautiful way that you've explained Hoopla. What does it do? What kind of functions that it has, and how you plan on growing it further? Coming back to your starting point, I can only imagine it as nerve-wracking to realize that there is no tool that can help you teach emotions to your child with your situation that you were dealing with back then. And what was your starting point like? Did you invest into Hoopla by yourself? Did you have an investor? How did you start?
So initially I started just investing and creating something to meet my personal needs. I wanted a calming tool. So I had found a haptic therapy. Sorry, let me take a step back. Haptic therapy is something that has helped me with my own anxiety. So it is this multisensory tool that is helping calm the nervous system. It's that tactile sensations. So I wanted to create something that was accessible for my kids. I found something, it was a big stuffed animal that has different heartbeats and sensations, and it does have a proven calming effect for kids. But it wasn't accessible. I couldn't fit it in my purse. If I forgot it and I was out, it would cause other problems because my children then associated like, okay, feeling calm in moments of panic with this very large stuffed animal. So I was like, I need something smaller. I need something, I don't know, those like Tamagotchi, like keychains. Like I wanted to find something that had this haptic feedback in that size that I could always have with me. And so one time I remember taking a restaurant buzzer and retrofitting it into a stuffed animals because it gave that vibration that was calming, but still it didn't seem that accessible. And one day I remember just my phone was vibrating and I was like, why haven't I thought of my phone? Obviously, I wonder how we can adapt that sensation. So I looked into it further. I talked to some developers, just what can we do with our phone? What types of sensations can we create? And it's amazing. I mean, we have some where there's a visual of a dandelion being blown. You like wish on a dandelion, you blow the seeds and you can feel the seeds spreading just by holding the phone. And when you have the combination of the visual and the tactile, it can create this really immersive experience for kids. So I started investing just because I wanted to create something for my child. And then that's when it expanded and I realized, okay, there's a brand here. I had a marketing branding background. So I kind of developed what would that brand look like? Who would my audience be? And through this journey, then I did get a grant. I was on Dubai Bling and Mona Katan and Tara Lavani and Seema Ved gave me a small grant to kind of kick everything off, and it allowed me to hire some developers. And then after that, I've just continued to reinvest in it, continue to invest my money, and I do have an angel investor as well now.
That's a beautiful journey that you have, and just seeing something that you've invested in grow. I think there's nothing more magical than that, and seeing the effect that it has. I did read about you had, I think, 10,000 users when you started off in 2022, 2023.
Starting off, we had about 1,000 users. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I added a zero.
I mean, I'll take it.
My apologies. So how did you get the word out there when you started out? Because I assume this was something that you were testing with it and then you launched it. And then what was that process like?
Yeah,
going to market.
Initially, like our research and development, before we even developed the app, we were just talking to families, surveys, testing different types of activities. And that was about a year to decide like, okay, am I really going to invest my time and money into this project? So we had a lot of feedback from families, and we had kind of grown this organic user base. And then once we actually had a tool and we had the app, then we worked with professionals like occupational therapists, child psychologists, and they were recommending it to their patients. And that was the best form of advertisement because, first of all, they are meeting our target audience with a real need, and these families are looking for tools. And so that's really how it has grown. It's all been organic growth so far. We started testing digital marketing, some ads, but that's not something we've pursued. We tested it. It was expensive. We realized we weren't getting what we wanted from it. And we are continuing with that organic growth. Partnerships have been really successful for us. And we have a small social media following, but it is active and we get a lot of users through that as well.
When it comes to investing into these tools as parents, what has your user base like? Has it gone up and down? Has there been phases? Do you think there's a lot of market for physical tools when we see a lot of dependency on all the digital tools? Do you think that's something that would be accepted? Is this something that you've tried, or how are you going ahead with it?
I mean, we're trying to create kind of a whole ecosystem. So we want products that complement each other, but that can be used independently. We really want to meet families where they are and not say, okay, this is how you're supposed to do it. Give them choices. So ideally, they would use the physical tools and the digital tools in different situations, but that might not be the case for everyone. So what we're trying to create are tools that can adapt to specific family needs. And that's why we're offering a range of items.
Something that I've personally, and this is something that I dealt with, is that once a trial period is over, like with the 7-day period, I forget about it.
Yeah.
Is this something that you notice? And what do you do about such scenarios? Because sometimes, like even within the 7-day period, I use it for a day or 2 days. And then after that, I just forget about it. It's not that I don't want to use it. It's just, it does not fit in with my routine.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming this is a situation that you've dealt with where, let's say, even before the trial period is over, people forget about it.
Yeah. And I think especially because we're limiting the features that we use to keep people on the app, it is a struggle. And so that's why we do have to just spend a lot of time educating parents. And this is just in smaller individual, like through partnerships. It's a great way that we can already tap into a strong user base who we kind of know their interests and what they're looking for. And we can keep following up with them when we work with our occupational therapists and child psychologists. They're continuing to get feedback from these families. So that's been incredibly helpful for us. But yeah, the free trial, it doesn't always work. And retention is something that we are very focused on, and how to make sure that people keep coming back on a daily basis. That's what we're looking for. So that's why we are creating these new tools as well, and trying to figure out how to make sure that there's more consistency, more daily usage. But it is a challenge trying to create something where you just use it for 5 minutes a day. I mean, that's what we're asking parents. We don't want them to use it for any longer. So it's just, trial and error and balance. Yeah.
Would the tool be different for, let's say, somebody who has a child with special needs? It's a completely different scenario. You are more sensitive. You need to be more understanding. Would Hoopla work there as well, or would you have some different tools within Hoopla for children who have, let's say, autism, ADHD? How does the tool differ, or is it the same?
No, it's really interesting because when the tool was being created in the beginning, it was to create something for everyone to use. So instead of focusing on children who have special needs, let's create something that brings emotional wellness into every family's daily life, like brushing your teeth. And it wasn't trying to focus on a specific challenge. And then when I started just showcasing it at conferences, so many people would come up and they would be like, oh, my daughter has autism. And I think this would be amazing for her, or I work in this this school and we work with different types of interventions, and I think this would work with our students. So while it wasn't created for special needs, there are applications that I think professionals are or parents are realizing. If we were to create something specifically for special needs, then I think that would need to really be thought through, and they would probably be independent products. But because every child is different, for example, autism, sometimes it works really well because some children like this tactile sensation, but sometimes they, it only creates more anxiety for children. So I think that's where it is very much case by case. This is something that is not supposed to address specific problems. It's more of a proactive tool.
The next question, I'm coming from a place of lack of education because I've never really looked into emotions at all. I think I've just been in a bubble where I grew up. Never really thought about emotions. And I don't really have kids, so it's not like, or technically younger siblings, I'm the youngest one. So never really thought about how emotions work. How do you deal with them? Are emotions the same when it's with a normal child? And my apologies, I know I called ADHD and a special needs thing when it's an intervention that's needed over there. Are emotions the same, or do they vary? How do emotions work?
But I mean, emotions, it's different for everyone. I mean, regardless, everyone is different. So you experience joy differently from I. And even, each individual, sometimes we can't even identify exactly what we're feeling because it's a combination of new emotions that we've never felt before. So emotions, they're very complex. And I think that it's just something, when you have an awareness and when you have consistency about, okay, let's try to understand emotions and try to understand how we are personally experiencing them. And as a parent, I think it's really important for parents to understand how your children experience them. And so it is very individual, and there's definitely no one size fits all. But what we do know is everyone experiences emotions, right? And there's such a range of emotions.
Okay, because for me, I'm just trying to understand, like, you have this huge target market out there, and then you have to create a product that somehow caters to all the different needs, where you cannot create a product that's one size fits all, but you have to create something that definitely is solving a need. But yes, coming back to your own personal journey, you started off, I know you started off as in the fashion industry as an intern, and then you moved on to, I had all of these names in the back of my head, and now it's just like push.
Yeah, I've had a very varied background.
And you are also the co-founder for You Chef.
Yes, that was my initial entry into the whole entrepreneurial side, tech space. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what You Chef is? And I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, You Chef. So it was a recipe meal planning app. We actually never launched it. We developed it. It was a fully functioning product, but it was something that came out, another project that came out of COVID. I personally don't cook. I don't like to cook, but I wanted something that was easy and accessible. And I realized a lot of these meal planning kits that come, you can get it delivered and make meals pretty easily. There was a lot of waste because I had a lot of products in my pantry. So how could we connect it with suppliers and connect recipes? And at the time, we wanted to support restaurants who, during lockdown were struggling. And so we were working with restaurants to provide recipes. They would get a kickback for users. This was the whole plan, at least. And so it was, again, I'm a non-technical founder. So it was my first experience working with developers, briefing developers, understanding how to create wireframes for apps, things like that, which was incredibly helpful later on when I decided to launch Hoopla, because with UChef, we had a technical co-founder. And so we were working alongside with him. And then Hoopla, I was doing completely
All by yourself.
by myself, working with, freelancers. But since I had this base and this understanding, or at least a foundation, it really was what allowed me to jump into Hoopla.
Was there a particular reason why? Because you had everything planned out with UChef, and I don't think there are a lot of apps that actually look into the whole meal planning situation. I think the ones that I have tried a few, because I don't personally like cooking either.
Yeah.
So I've looked into a few and I'm like, I don't have those ingredients. Like, what do I do? Like, and for me personally, I'm very lazy, and I'm like, to actually sit and be like, these are the ingredients that I have at home. They would probably be like quite a few, like thousands. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So was there a reason why you did not launch UChef into the market completely?
Well, yeah. I mean, there were a few different reasons. Partly because this was right during COVID, or kind of at the end of COVID, and a lot of the suppliers hadn't really been online here. This is a product that exists in other areas. So in Europe and the US, there are quite a few meal planning recipe apps. Here, it didn't really exist. And we were talking to, the founder of Kibson's, we were talking to El Grocer, we were talking to Carrefour, we were talking to the big players. But to create something that could integrate through their systems while that was evolving so rapidly, because like I said, Spinneys, I mean, they didn't really have a big online presence until COVID, I feel. So the timing was a little off. Also, it was just one of these things where, like I said, it was a product that existed in other places. Like I didn't have my heart into it. And it was trying to solve a problem, and it did seem to get like positive reaction from people, but it wasn't something that I could live and breathe. Whereas Hoopla, like when I was creating this, it was very stressful. And that's when I realized, like, okay, my anxiety is coming back more. Like, I need to create tools for myself. And this wasn't from a business standpoint, but just like, how am I going to deal with like parenting and all of these different elements in life? And when I started researching, I realized that's where my heart was. My heart is like, I can live and breathe this for the rest of my life. And even if like failure after failure, like I will always come back and try to figure out what the next step is, because this is everything.
Like, that's of course very interesting. Like, I know people tell this all the time, that even if it's your 9-to-5 job or something that you're working on, if you don't have your heart in it, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So like, and that's a story that's was with you. From your background, you do not have the exact technical background or the finance background. What were your biggest learnings when you started with UChef? What did you learn that when you moved on to Hoopla, you're like, I'm not going to make these mistakes again?
Yeah, there were lots of learnings. There's still lots of learnings, I mean, I feel like it's never done. But I think initially with UChef, we spent a lot of money in the wrong places, and I learned how to be very scrappy when I was doing it on my own. And I feel like because I don't have the traditional background in technology or finance, I do things differently. I mean, if I look at all of my experiences in my career, something that actually plays a huge role is my time in the art world. I originally moved to Dubai to open up a gallery for a private collector, and I realized art is all about emotion. I mean, when you're selling pieces of art for hundreds of thousands of dollars, people they have emotional reaction to these items. So as someone who is selling these items, you're learning how people react, what evokes emotion in them. And I bring in all of that into Hoopla all the time. So I think it's really interesting when you come from a different perspective, and that's kind of where the magic happens. So I would just recommend to anyone, don't feel like you're at a deficit because maybe you don't have a traditional background, but look at it as a positive.
That's interesting, because I've always felt a deficit when it comes to, I'm like, I don't have a tech background. I don't have the finance background. Like, if I want to start something, I would need co-founders who have that background, because I don't want to get scammed by somebody. Is that a fear that you probably had? And did you ever feel the need for a co-founder when it came to Hoopla? Because with you, Chef, you did have a co-founder who was into tech.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it could go either way. There are a lot of reasons why it would be helpful to have a co-founder, but also like it's very nice just being able to make decisions and not have to negotiate with a co-founder, or I think there can be a lot of problems and issues with co-founders. So um, I I think, I mean, finding the right people and making sure you're working with the right people who have these skills, understanding the skills that you lack, and then finding the people to bring those skills in is important. So it's a lot of like self-realization. Where do I need to, which holes do I need to fill? But it's also, I think with all of the tools available right now, it's a lot easier to be a solopreneur, a founder by yourself, because there are incredible tools, AI tools who can be your CMO and your CFO. And as long as you like continue to have that human touch and make sure that there are some checks and balances in place, I think you can do a lot by yourself.
You come from a lot of experience. You've learned a lot along the way. Uh, Going back when you founded either you, Chef, or Hoopla, what's the main advice that you would give your younger self, 3 years younger than you?
3 years younger. I think the biggest piece of advice would be definitely don't compare yourself to other founders. Don't compare your business to other businesses, because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, some businesses or individuals present themselves really well, but they're struggling in other areas that you might never know about. So try not to compare. And it's hard because it's something that I always tell myself not to do, and I still do it. And be confident and just try. There really is no roadmap that you're supposed to follow. I mean, I think it's the people that continue to persevere and the people who are resilient, who are the founders that actually make something. It's not necessarily the founders with the biggest checkbook, or the companies with the biggest checkbook, or the biggest, user base. I think it's just the founders that don't give up.
That's beautiful. Also, you've had a beautiful journey, 3 years long with Hoopla now. Have you ever received any negative criticism that maybe changed the path of Hoopla, or was it always all positive? What was that journey? Well, was there any low time for you?
I mean, yeah, constantly. It's like every other day. I mean, it's something that I still face criticism sometime. I mean, there are so many times where you have to put yourself out there as a founder, and not everyone's going to like the idea. Not everyone's going to understand what you're trying to build. Investors are trying to pick everything apart, and that is really frustrating and difficult, and it's hard to bounce back from that. But I think that some of the criticism that I heard, that initially I was like, oh, whatever, they don't know my business, I'm going to do it the way I want, was that some people wanted physical tools. They wanted it, off the app. I was really focused on creating digital tools because this is the most accessible and that can reach the most amount of people. And I resisted for a long time. But then, once I was more open to, okay, how can I create these tools that people are asking for that can still complement, it doesn't necessarily have to change everything, but how can we incorporate it into what we already have?
I love that you mentioned that you incorporated rather than changing your basic foundation of how you started or what the main tool was. When it comes to pitching in front of investors, do you have tips for anybody out there who's going to pitch their product to investors? Do you keep it simple? Do you keep it top line? Do you go into details? What do you do?
I mean, pitching is one of my least favorite things to do. Some people are so good at it, and it's frustrating because I feel like I'm never going to be as confident as some of these other founders, and they're the ones that, have charisma, and that's just not me. I try to make it work for my advantage. The fact that it's a mental health um, company and I share my own experience, I think it's okay to show that I'm nervous and to talk about it. And so I try to be as vulnerable as I can be. And there have been times where I feel like, okay, I need to adapt for this audience and maybe not share my personal experience because maybe it would be uncomfortable or confronting. And I realized that I'm not authentic when I do that. And the best thing you can do is go out there, be authentic, try not to please everyone, but really stick to your authenticity. Just a small tip that someone gave me that I found so useful is when you're pitching, find one person and just look at the top of their head like the whole time. And it's genius. It's just like one of these small little tips that you don't have to look them in the eyes. Just don't look at anyone's in the eyes because that I feel like will make you nervous. But find one person that you can always go back to and look at the top of their head.
That's really wonderful advice, because I remember, giving presentations when I was in university, and I would have this thing where either I would not wear my glasses because then I cannot see anybody, but like it looks like I'm looking at everybody, but I could not see any faces, and that worked for me.
Yeah.
Else I would look at somebody who's sitting in the front seat and just like stare at one person. And there was this one time when I was presenting and this guy just went and he walked out. And my heart, and I'm like for a minute, like this was my final presentation. For a minute, I was just shook. And I'm like, the guy just walked out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. Let's just continue. Like I just made a joke and I jumped back into it.
Yeah.
But I've realized not to concentrate on one person or like look at them in the eye, because let's say their emotions change, your emotions also.
Oh, definitely.
Like, you reflect.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that the other 90 people who are sitting there don't really know what happened. They're just like, oh, what happened?
Oh, I know. I mean, there was one time where I got distracted. Someone waved and I thought they were waving at me, but they were waving at someone beside me. And I just totally lost my train of thought. And luckily it was during the practice pitch. It was during this Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Fund. We had this final pitch where we had been practicing for ever. And I just blanked. Like I couldn't continue. I walked off the stage. I was like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And it was my biggest failure, like in that setting. And it felt terrible. And then the thing was like, I had to go back an hour later and actually pitch it in front of a couple hundred people. But in that moment, the other founders were all there and they were so encouraging. And everyone has had their story when they just like totally bombed a pitch, and it definitely helped.
That must have been so supportive.
It
like,
was.
just have that support and be like, you can do this. Like
exactly. Yeah. So many people came up to me, and when you realize, and also like I got the biggest cheer at the end when I did successfully pitch, no stumbles. But I knew that there were so many people who were cheering me on.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like to just have that kind of support, and just going to through these pitches cohorts, has it made an impact? How much has it helped Hoopla to develop here in the market?
Oh, I mean, so much. It's helped tremendously. I've been involved in quite a few. I must say that there is some point where I was chasing more and more, and the amount of time that you have to invest in these programs sometimes can be quite big. And so it really has to fit where you are in your business. Like I'm more at I'm launching new products. I really need my full attention in the business. And unless it's also bringing funding in, it's just not the right time for me. But initially, when I hadn't launched the app yet, it gave me these incredible foundation. And then there are others that are more for the growth stage. So I think it's really important to understand where you are and what's going on in the business. And just because it has a big name, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right decision to make at that time.
Just for our listeners, are there any programs that you would recommend that people, let's say somebody's starting out something new, or they have this really great idea and they want to launch it, that these are the programs that you must visit or look into?
Yeah, I mean, I can share from my own personal experience, but I know that it's not, always the same experience
Yeah,
for other people.
absolutely.
I was involved in a TechStars Founder Catalyst program in Abu Dhabi. It's specifically for early childhood education, and that was incredible. I mean, that I haven't been through the full TechStars program, which they have cohorts in different cities all over the world. But I have heard that it is very supportive. If the experience that I had is any indication, I think that it's something that every company should look into. I mean, they can help with funding, and I think that it's a great network. The Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Fund, specifically here in Dubai, was incredible. They open doors for you. It's an incredibly supportive community. And it is very individualized. So it's not just a coursework that you follow or, meetings that you have to attend. And it's something that is truly personalized for you as a founder, for your business. You can come and say specifically, like, I want someone to help me pitching. And so they can bring in someone who specifically focuses on that. Or you can ask for introductions to certain organizations. So I think that that's something more for the growth stage. I think I entered into it a bit too early for Hoopla, and I didn't get as much as I could have if I was more at the growth stage. But if you are at the growth stage, look into that. And what else? Those are the two that were the most impactful. Yeah.
That's really helpful for anybody who's starting out. And just finally, let's say somebody's starting out, do you have, like, what are the steps that you should go through? Because something that I've learned is you really need to have a database where you tell them the problem, or you ask them if this is even a problem, because we see so many apps out there that are created, but they're not really solving anything. Like, even with Hoopla, you mentioned that there's so many other apps out there, but they're not really solving a need. So keeping that in mind, what are maybe the first 3 steps that you would recommend or advise when somebody's starting out or launching a new product?
I think take your time and research and really understand, yes, what this problem is, who the audience might be. And I mean, I told you I spent a year researching and talking to families and getting out there and trying to talk to your target audience. I think that's going to be the best, like, first step that you can make. After that, I think getting some confidence to just do it. And I think that's the hardest thing. Just, you're never ready, and you're never ready to start. You're never ready to launch. I think a mentor told me that it's good to feel that way. If you feel like you're putting a perfect product out there, it means that you've waited way too long, because you need to constantly reiterate. And you put a product out, you get feedback, you make changes, you put another product out, you continue to get that feedback. I mean, it's a continual loop. And so, yes, research, find your target audience, and get the confidence to start. Those would be my 3 steps.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really helpful. And just one final note, because I'm just so curious and so involved in the whole journey. Like, it's been such a beautiful journey. I remember you mentioned that you have an angel investor. And I do understand that when somebody's starting out, for them, finances is a big problem, because there's only so much that you can invest in all by yourself. And I was told, and I learned this recently, is that angel investors are not always big people out there. Sometimes it's just your family who would say, I really like the idea. Like, here's a small grant that's from the family that can help you launch your business. For you, what's your definition of angel investors? And how do you maybe reach out? How do you connect with them? And for you, was it your family? Was it your friends? How do you go about the whole finances situation?
So I started the whole fundraising journey kind of early on. nothing came out of it. But because of these programs that I was involved with, they put me in touch with institutional investors, and angel investors are, I mean, I think the definition of an angel investor is a non-institutional investor. So at first, I learned a lot from very blunt feedback from these institutional investors, or from these pitches that I had done. And through that, I often grew the investor network. Just if someone said no, I always forced myself to follow up and say, okay, it was a no for you, but who can you introduce me to? And that was, I mean, you really have to put yourself out there and be vulnerable, but people responded. Like, I feel, and a lot of times also, maybe there were companies that I'm really intrigued by that might have nothing to do with mental wellness or mental health, but it's just a company that I admire, and I try to connect with the founder on LinkedIn or have a conversation. Or I feel like people are pretty accessible in Dubai. It's incredible how many people respond and want to share their journey. So, and then when I meet someone, I always ask, like, okay, who can you put me in touch with? And sometimes I go into meetings, and this might not be, advice that everyone gives, but I don't think you always need to know what you're trying to get from the meeting. It's just like, go in with an open mind and just be honest and say, like, I really admire you for these reasons, and I don't know how this is going to help me, but I just would love to hear your journey, and usually you can gain something.
There's so many beautiful takeaways from there. For me, I think the one that stood out was when you said, even if it's a no, who can you put me in touch with?
Yes.
And like, for me, like, once I hear a no, I'm like, defeated. So that is a beautiful takeaway. And that's such a lovely note to end the podcast on. Thank you so much for coming on, Jacqueline. It was an absolute pleasure.
I know. I loved every minute of it.
Thank you. The sirens.
The sirens, right. No, thank you. This has been great.
Thank you so much.